The marketing is flawless. Zero emissions, a clean conscience. The dawn of the green energy revolution. We watch the keynotes broadcast from Silicon Valley. We see the sleek, silent cars gliding down coastal highways. We applaud the end of the fossil fuel era. We believe the story because it's a comforting story. The truth requires digging, literally. Welcome to the foundation of the 21st century. This shattered, toxic Earth is the actual price of progress. We are currently witnessing the largest, fastest wealth transfer and resource grab in modern human history. The era of oil dictatorships holding the global economy hostage is ending. We are simply replacing them with a brand new, highly secretive tech cartel. The empires of tomorrow will not run on petroleum. They are being built right now on a foundation of lithium, cobalt, and rare earth metals. The world is hunting for white gold. Consider the sheer scale of the extraction. To build a single electric vehicle battery, you have to process roughly 500,000 pounds of raw earth. 500,000 pounds of dirt, rock, and brine must be blasted, crushed, and chemically boiled down for one single car. Now multiply that by the millions of EVs rolling off assembly lines this year. Add in every smartphone, every laptop, every smartwatch on the planet. The demand curve is violent. Governments are quietly hoarding these materials. Multinational tech monopolies are panicking over their supply lines. Shadow corporations are exploiting economically vulnerable nations to rip these minerals out of the ground at breakneck speed. The nations that control the flow of lithium and cobalt hold the kill switch for the modern world. Let's strip away the corporate greenwashing and look at the true cost of your smartphone's battery. If you want to understand the new geopolitical order, look at the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Katanga region in the southeast holds the highest-grade copper and cobalt deposits on the planet. Roughly 70% of the world's entire cobalt supply comes from right here. This single strip of land dictates the future of global transportation and communication. Why cobalt? It provides crucial thermal stability to lithium-ion batteries. Without it, the dense energy packed into your phone or your electric car would cause it to overheat and spontaneously combust. Tech giants absolutely rely on it. They publish glossy annual reports promising ethical, traceable supply chains. Those corporate promises disintegrate the second you step foot off the paved roads in Katanga. A massive percentage of global cobalt is extracted through what the industry politely calls artisanal mining. That is a sanitized corporate term for desperate people digging by hand in toxic dirt. We are talking about hundreds of thousands of men, women, and children. They work without heavy machinery. They work without hard hats, steel-toed boots, or structural supports for their tunnels. The human toll is staggering. Tunnels collapse constantly, burying workers alive. The dust they breathe is laced with toxic heavy metals, leading to severe respiratory diseases and birth defects. They dig from dawn until dusk, hauling heavy sacks of raw ore out of deep, unstable pits. For this backbreaking, lethal labor, a miner might earn $2 or $3 a day. You might wonder how the most advanced trillion-dollar tech companies end up using materials mined by hand in the jungle. The answer is intentional supply chain laundering. Silicon Valley maintains its plausible deniability through a labyrinth of unregulated middlemen. The raw, bloody ore does not go straight from a child's hand to a battery factory. It gets washed through the system. The artisanal miners sell their sacks of ore at local buying houses, known as maisons d'achat. These open-air markets are a free-for-all. Here, the hand-dug cobalt is mixed directly with industrially mined cobalt from large, legally compliant corporate mines. Once those rocks are mixed together in the same truck, tracing the ethical origin becomes mathematically impossible. The blood is officially blended into the baseline. From the buying houses, massive trucks haul the blended ore across the border to ports in South Africa or Tanzania. It is loaded onto cargo ships. The vast majority of these ships are sailing to one specific destination, China. The refineries there buy the raw material, process it into fine chemical powders, and sell it to the massive conglomerates that manufacture battery cells. The tech companies buy from the battery manufacturers. Every step of the transaction creates another layer of legal insulation. By the time that battery is sealed inside a pristine $1,000 smartphone in a California showroom, the dark origins have been completely erased from the ledger. The system works exactly as designed. We leave the suffocating humidity of the Congo and cross the globe to South America. The landscape shifts radically, and so does the method of extraction. Here, the raw material for the green energy revolution is not dug out of deep rock shafts with pickaxes. It is pumped up from beneath ancient, prehistoric salt flats. This region is known as the Lithium Triangle, straddling the borders of Chile, Argentina, and Bolivia. These high-altitude deserts hold more than half of the planet's known lithium reserves. If cobalt is the thermal anchor that keeps a battery stable, lithium is the vital spark that holds the charge. You absolutely cannot build a modern electric vehicle without it. Look at this place from the air. The Salar de Atacama looks completely alien. Massive, perfectly geometric pools of neon blue and bright yellow liquid stretch for miles across the horizon. They contrast violently with the sterile white desert surrounding them. This surreal landscape is the site of a profound and deeply disturbing environmental paradox. Extracting the absolute core element required to save the global climate means actively destroying a fragile, ancient ecosystem. We are quite literally trading one form of catastrophic ecological damage for another, all under the banner of sustainability. To understand the hypocrisy, you have to look at how lithium is actually pulled from the earth. Mining conglomerates drill deep beneath the salt crust to reach subterranean reservoirs of lithium-rich brine. They pump this heavy, toxic, salty water to the surface and flood those massive geometric pools. Then, they simply wait for the fierce desert sun and wind to evaporate the water over several months, leaving a concentrated lithium carbonate sludge behind. The math behind this process is terrifying. To produce a single ton of usable lithium, these companies pump approximately 500,000 gallons of water out of the earth. They are doing this in the Atacama Desert. The Atacama is officially the driest non-polar desert in the entire world. Water here is infinitely more precious than gold. The sheer volume of liquid being dragged out of the ground is permanently altering the region's water table. Natural lagoons that have existed for millennia are shrinking. Fresh water supplies are being contaminated by the toxic brine. The local wildlife, including vast flocks of pink flamingos that rely on these specific hypersaline lakes, are rapidly dying off. This disaster hits human populations the hardest. Indigenous communities, like the Licking people, have survived in this brutal environment for thousands of years through careful agricultural practices. Now, their ancestral wells are running dry. The soil is cracking. They are watching multinational mining giants drain the lifeblood of their homeland. The corporate logic is incredibly ruthless. Massive chemical conglomerates secure multi-decade leases from local governments, promising economic booms that rarely materialize for the actual residents. The wealth flows out alongside the lithium, leaving behind cracked earth and depleted aquifers. The local population pays the ultimate price, so a commuter in Berlin or Los Angeles can lower their carbon footprint. We are systematically destroying the environment in the southern hemisphere to build zero-emission infrastructure in the north. The white gold rush is hollowing out South America. But pulling the lithium out of the ground is only the first step. To turn that raw chemical powder into a functioning battery, you have to control the global choke point, and the West does not control it. For decades, the United States and Europe were asleep at the wheel. The prevailing economic strategy was simple: offshore the heavy industry. Western governments happily outsourced the dirty, toxic, and expensive work of mineral processing to Asia because it kept consumer prices down and pollution off their own soil. We designed the technology, but we handed over the keys to the factory. While the West obsessed over software development and social media apps, Beijing was playing a completely different game. The Chinese government spent the last 20 years executing a masterclass in long-term geopolitical strategy. They realized early on that whoever controls the raw materials of the future controls the future itself, and they began to quietly buy up the global supply board. Chinese state-backed conglomerates systematically acquired massive stakes in foreign mining operations. They bought out struggling operations in the Democratic Republic of Congo. They secured massive offtake agreements in the Australian outback. They embedded themselves deeply into the South American lithium triangle. They traded infrastructure, highways, stadiums, and ports for exclusive, multi-decade access to the absolute dirt-level foundation of the global green economy. Owning the dirt is incredibly important, but the actual power lies in the refining process. You cannot simply pull a rock out of the ground in Africa and shove it into a Tesla in California. The raw ore is useless until it is subjected to a highly complex, chemically intense, and environmentally brutal purification process. This is the true choke point. China completely dominates global mineral refining. They refine nearly 70% of the world's cobalt and more than half of its lithium. They have built an absolute monopoly on the middle of the supply chain. The West completely surrendered the capacity to bake the ingredients, leaving them entirely dependent on the exact nation they view as their primary geopolitical rival. The supply chain has become a logistical paradox. Even if an American mining company successfully pulls lithium out of the ground in Nevada, they often lack the domestic facilities to process it into battery-grade material. That raw American ore is frequently loaded onto a cargo ship, sailed thousands of miles across the Pacific to China to be chemically refined, and then sold back to the United States at a premium. Beijing has effectively weaponized this entire supply chain. They hold the ultimate kill switch for the global green economy. In a world increasingly defined by sanctions, tariffs, and proxy conflicts, this leverage is devastating. Economic dominance is the modern equivalent of nuclear deterrence. By controlling the flow of processed critical minerals, China has secured an untouchable bargaining chip on the world stage. If a major trade war escalates, or if a conflict erupts over Taiwan, Beijing can simply turn off the tap. They could enact a strict export ban on battery-grade lithium and cobalt. If that happens, the Western tech and automotive industries would grind to an absolute catastrophic halt in a matter of weeks. The factories would go dark. The sudden, terrifying realization of this vulnerability has finally hit Washington and Brussels. The panic has officially set in. The US and Europe are now desperately scrambling to break the monopoly before it is too late. Billions of dollars are being rapidly deployed to build domestic supply chains from scratch. The race to escape the dragon's chokepoint has begun. To break this monopoly, Western governments are flooding the zone with capital. We are seeing a frantic, multi-billion-dollar scramble to build domestic battery gigafactories. Politicians are desperately trying to fast-track mining permits to secure raw materials on home soil. But you cannot simply decree a massive industrial supply chain into existence overnight. The infrastructure takes years to build, and the geopolitical clock is ticking. This massive domestic push immediately collides with a brutal reality. Western consumers demand electric cars and clean energy, yet they fiercely oppose opening lithium or cobalt mines in their own backyards. The pushback from local communities and environmental groups is intense. We want the green future, provided the actual environmental destruction happens out of sight in another hemisphere. Proposed mining projects across North America and Europe are locked in decade-long legal battles. The stringent regulations designed to protect domestic ecosystems mean securing a mining permit can take up to 15 years. China can permit and open a massive processing facility in 18 months. The West is entirely trapped in a regulatory paradox of its own making. The only viable escape route from this geopolitical chokepoint is radical innovation. Billions in venture capital are pouring into alternative battery chemistries. Scientists are racing to commercialize sodium-ion batteries, replacing highly contested lithium with cheap, incredibly abundant salt. Others are developing solid-state technology or engineering methods to extract critical minerals directly from seawater. Companies are also scaling up massive recycling facilities to mine dead batteries instead of the earth. If we can efficiently harvest the lithium and cobalt from the millions of discarded smartphones and early-generation EVs, we can create a closed-loop system. We can slowly start to sever our extreme reliance on conflict zones, vulnerable ecosystems, and adversarial superpowers. Until these new technologies scale, we are locked in a brutal tug-of-war. The transition away from fossil fuels is absolutely necessary for planetary survival. The world must decarbonize, but we must open our eyes to the heavy toll this transition demands. We are actively trading the oil cartels of the past for a new breed of resource empires. The Green Revolution has a dark, deeply hidden foundation. The empires of tomorrow are being built right now on exploited labor, drained deserts, and monopolized refineries. We have to demand better supply chains, and we have to innovate our way out of this trap. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more investigations into the systems running our world.